Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am going to be your host today. My name is Kem and you are listening to Part of Work. And today, I have with me Javerna and Balisa. And we are going to be jumping right back into it, speaking on the current issues that plague South Africa, GBV, and what everyone is doing to combat it and work against it. And I would like to start today, if willing, on the issue of the movement, right? The activation movement that has happened in South Africa that taken the country by storm, right? And it is going, in my opinion, I think it's going very well. However, we have also seen a rise in individuals who have now started different movements to not necessarily support the current Women for Change movement, but sort of try to take attention away from it in ways of expressing themselves on social media, changing their profile photos to be it blue or green, for example. And I would like to find out from the two of you, in your perspective, what does this do for the movement? And how does it affect what we're trying to achieve here?
I think the problem of it all is, especially the green profile pictures, it's meant being like, what about us, right? And no one's leaving you no one's forgetting about you, but you're not doing it as a, hey, we also need support. We also are having our problems. It's done as a, hey, you're not the only one struggling.
Mm.
It's like, it's a little tit for tat thing.
Mm.
And the problem with that is then we now just fall back into the gender wars we're always having on Twitter, on TikTok, of like, hey, men need this, women need that. And at the end of the day, people are dying. People are being raped. Mothers, children, elderly people, like there's babies in clinics. There's protocols for children in clinics who are being raped.
Mm.
At what points does your own little feelings kind of sit at the door? Because now we're having this separate conversation over what's really important, which is the fact that our stats are so high. There's so many of us who are dying, who are sitting in our homes, and our homes are being invaded, and we're having our lives and our safety taken from us. There are so many of us who are going about the day and have to be grateful that today it wasn't me, but I don't know if it's going to be me tomorrow. But hey, because you want to feel like, yeah, what about us? And you want to make it about you and not actually tackle your issues. But it's just like this tit for tat situation, as opposed to it actually being, hey, men have problems. Let's work through them. Let's do this in a healthy manner. Let's not ignore the issue. Because men's issues obviously do tie into GBV and, mental health issues. It ties into it, but you're not doing this to have a genuine conversation. You're doing it to kind of have your little aha. Now what?
I think I see what you mean in terms of it no longer being about empowerment and activation and more about competition to see who's suffering more. But before I comment further on that, Javerna, what do you think, sir?
Well, yeah, I'd agree with that, but I'd also like to say that in a way, the fact that these movements exist or coexist in a less than symbiotic relationship, it delegitimizes both movements. Because at first, obviously, there was the women's movement, which was done mostly to, and the profile pictures themselves were obviously done to show the visibility of this movement. And now the addition of these other movements kind of makes it seem almost like a fad. And that adds fuel to the fire of previous comments or criticisms by people who said that this is all just performative. And not just that, but now, even though some of their motives are sincere, the timing is just wrong. Because we've recently, and I get that this is November. To most people, it is Movember. To men, where we do take a step back and we focus on these men's issues, where some, in solidarity, grow their mustaches out. But the issue at hand right now, although it is gender-based violence, is usually directed or targeting women. And so I fear that it has become, two serious movements have become pandering in the eyes of many who see both of them occurring at the same time.
Okay. So I hear what you're saying in terms of now no longer being, again, about the activism and about addressing the issues that women are having, be it at an unfortunate time. It's now pandering to whatever crowd will listen the loudest.
Exactly.
And I personally am curious about what your thoughts are on not necessarily the way forward, but how would you suggest someone deals with this? Because now they're hearing all these different sides and they're losing focus on what the most pressing matters are. So from your views, what do you think would be the best way of going about this or informing people that, hey, it's not about a competition, it's more about getting people aware, because I think awareness is the first step towards change. So in your thoughts, how do we counter this? How do we work against these movements? Not necessarily in the sense of delegitimizing them or denouncing them, but rather saying, hey, let's take a break at the moment and focus on our most pressing issue, which I think obviously is
I think we
a
can all
state of
agree.
emergency.
Yes.
Yeah, so what do you think on that?
Would you like to speak first?
You can go first.
No, ladies first. Go ahead.
Well,
Chivalry, love that.
yeah, but like, where does chivalry come from? But that's another conversation for another day. I think the thing that becomes tricky is trying to figure out how to put this. Men's issues are part of the causes. So they're not out of the conversation. But the thing is, I think the problem is the message has validity. It's got space. Because whatever men are going through, clearly it's bad because you're killing us. You know, and at some point it starts to feel like women are being killed and raped for sport. And it's not just women. There was recently an elderly man who was raped and he just passed away recently. Like, do you know how violating that is to do to someone? Like an elderly person. Like, yo, so bad. But men's issues are part of the cause. And that's when we get into the larger conversation of like socioeconomic factors and what causes what puts people to rape. What are these different factors? I think it's a thing of one is part of the conversation and there's a group of individuals acting like it's not. Because when we have this conversation about GBV, when we have this conversation about rape and we look at it, we're like, yes, women are the majority. You know, we're hearing, you know, if you look at Women for Change posts every day. And they since they started, they haven't run out of people to post. So keep that in mind. If Women for Change runs for 3 years and they have someone to post every day, do you know how bad that is? Do you know how bad that? And Women for Change could post 10 people a day if they were serious. That's how they have videos where they have to do multiple people in a month. So yes, the conversation of men's issues are there, but I think the problem is people are turning it into let's go tit for tat. My issue is being ignored. It's like, no, it's not. Your issue is part of the cause. It's part of the problem. But we also can't get to dealing with that part of the problem because you also need to look yourself in the mirror. You need to sit with your boys and you need to have the conversations yourselves. Because women are fighting for their lives right now. And how can I still hold you when right now you are my perpetrator? How can I comfort you when you're the person I'm the most scared of? Because even if I walk down the street, I can be nice to one man. And that's the end of it for me. I could not give out my phone number to one man and that's the end of it for me. And I'm always rolling the dice in that experience. So I think what needs to happen is that people need to see that, hey, this is actually part of the broader conversation. But we can't get to that conversation first if you don't want to listen.
Yeah.
Because you've got to listen to firstly, okay, this is what we're talking about. And when we start to sit here, we sit long enough and we start to talk more about it, we're going to get to you.
Correct me if I'm wrong. From what I'm hearing, you don't want this to be a sort of scenario where we're saying we're isolating this movement and saying, oh, this is just about what women experience, and rather say, this is what they're experiencing, and these are the underlying factors that have led us to this point. So instead of just seeing it as, oh, only women are getting all the attention, it should be more of a, we're having these conversations because everyone is a part of this.
Yeah.
And we need to address it as such.
Yeah, it definitely, the G in gender-based violence is gender.
Yeah.
And gender is not male, female only. It's not women only. It's not female based, like it's gender based violence. And yes, we're talking about women more because obviously it's happening to them more, but there's still children that are in the conversation. There's still the elderly. There are still young boys. There are still men who are being raped. And it's heartbreaking because when you look at the statistics, and you look at the numbers and you sit and you stop and you really think about how terrifying it is. Because yes, for women, we're the first victim most of the time, but there are children who are not safe. No one's actually safe because if a rapist decides to rape, that's something you can't stop. And when we have this conversation and we isolate it to solely this and we ignore, because you can't fix the problem without going backwards and what's the cause of it? Why are you raping someone? Is that who you are? Is that a psychological thing? Are you doing this for sport? Were you raised in an environment where this is actually normal? Were you not taught what consent was? Have you been desensitized? Like you've got to start with why and where does this come from? Because how are you going to solve the problem if you don't even know the causes of it first? And that conversation goes back to our perpetrator, and your perpetrator is a man. And now you've got to sit with him and say, hey, what's actually going on? What's going on amongst you guys? Like, where is this coming from? Because now we're just suffering as a result of it. And you're also suffering, and that's why I'm suffering too. Like, it's just hurt people hurting people. And for all I know, you're doing this because it's fun to you, and that's terrifying. And I'll never know that if we don't sit and have that conversation of what's going on behind the scenes.
So, Dev, I've heard what Pralisa is saying and the experiences that women are having and the unfortunate reality of how people are taking it and how they're reacting to it, right? So in the sense of that in these conversations that need to be had between, unfortunately, those not involved, perpetrators and victims, going from that point onwards, what significant conversation do you think comes to mind first for you when you think of such issues?
I'd say the norms of man. I'd say that men need to talk to each other more. It's very common for a man to bottle up his emotions. But as you, as a man, can also attest to, bottling up the emotion doesn't remove it. It just festers. And that usually becomes rage, becomes anger, becomes a deep sadness. And things like that tend to birth horrible crimes, horrible actions, horrible mindsets. We're aware nowadays that we are in the age of influencers. And very often, the people young men look up to aren't necessarily your most upstanding citizens. They tend to perpetuate old values that have been left behind for a reason. But because young men nowadays feel ostracized by the broader society, even though that may not be the case, these people speaking directly to them, teaching them these things, feel like they care more. And so these young men gravitate toward those people. And so I feel like we'd be remiss to talk about men's issues in this because of the fact that very, very often we'd find that the reason men commit these violent acts, commit rape, is because of some underlying issue within them. Now, is it always that way? No. There are some men who simply have no reason. There's no defending it. I'm not saying that them having a reason for being like this is a defense to their actions, but I'm saying that this points to a broader societal issue that we must discuss.
Yeah, man. Just like coming back to Valesa's point, we don't have these conversations as gents. You see the malume slamming your aunt, and we don't have these conversations. We say malume wrong. We let these things. We see our friends until it's your sister. What's the problem? We let these things slide. Kakhulu machita. So icala ngithi vele ngoba bathi Let's feel better about it. We are the perpetrators. So we have to fix this as guys. Talk about these things. We are avoiding, we know. Our uncles promoting what? Promiscuity. Yeah, why ain't them fun? Why? That is a lot. So we have to talk about these things, actually.
Yeah, and even to piggyback on that, like if a young man is dating multiple women, he's a dog. He's one of those guys. But the moment a woman does that, now she's demoted to less than human. Because how dare a woman defile herself? Like, I think we need to remove these gendered terms, these gendered terms. And when I say terms, I mean terms in the sense of conditions. That it's all right for a young man to date multiple women at the same time. But no, a girl, no. I believe that either it is right across the board or it is wrong across the board.
Then to follow up on that, this is directed to both of you. How would you then recommend we go about in this specific scenario that we are currently facing? How do we go about having these conversations and educating young men and women without ostracizing either side or making them feel like they are at fault? Because something we will tend to notice in movements like this, we end up being in a scenario where a different movement starts with the simple reasoning that it's not all of us, right? But unfortunately, this is an issue that affects all of us because it affects, shall I say, the best of us, right? So in your look and your outlook and the way you perceive the world, how do you feel would be the best way for us to address the education of young men and the conversations between men and women and everyone who is unfortunately a stakeholder, every human being related to this scenario? How best do we constructively criticize such behavior and how do we develop towards eradicating it in our society?
I think it starts with even people who are like, oh, but I wouldn't do that. Yeah, I don't know that. I don't know that when I'm walking down the street. I don't know that when I'm having a conversation with you. I don't know. And the only way I'll ever know is if you don't do it. And I think that's what some people don't understand is that it's not personal. I'm not saying that you, just because you're a man, you're going to do that to me. There's a high chance that you're going to, but I'm not saying that it's you. And you have to understand that I'm walking through the world scared. I'm walking through the world and I'm not safe. And for me, I'm trying to get home. I'm trying to get to school. I'm trying to get out of ShopRite without someone asking for my phone number. I'm trying to go about my day-to-day life. And unfortunately, I don't know. I don't have there's no machine that's going to go, doo-doo, rapist, next. There's no type of detection for this. So I think when we go about educating and having the conversation, the thing is, I do believe men are the one who need to have this conversation with each other because there's a lot of, I can't hold you accountable to a certain degree. Because I, as a woman, I could tell you hey, what you're doing is wrong. And then you go back to your boys and your boys tell you what you're doing is right. Who do you think you're going to listen to? 9 times out of 10, genuinely, you guys are going to listen to each other first before you're going to listen to me. And I think at some point also, we've all just it's hard because there's a lot of pain between us. There's a lot of anger. There's gender wars. We've all seen it with discussing dating things. The way people get so mad and they get so opinionated and they're judging each other. That at some point it's got to strip away and it's got to leave the conversation because this is not about, oh, just because someone slept with more people and they get raped. There's no justification. You rape someone, you rape someone. Someone gets raped, it doesn't matter whether the skirts were short, whether they were drunk, whether they're a man, whether they're a woman, whether they were prepared. It doesn't matter because rape doesn't happen without a rapist in the room. Gender-based violence doesn't happen without an abuser in the room. And the conversation needs to start out with, hey, we need to take care of ourselves. And taking care of yourself means being honest about the fact that you're hurt about things. Being honest about the fact that, yes, this is hurting me and I'm crying. And you can't keep on waiting for a woman to make that space for you. You have to have that space amongst each other, because at the end of the day, we all make our close friends, and a lot of the times they're of the same gender. If I go out into the world and my female friends, my best friends, are cheering on my horrible behavior, just because a man comes and tells me you're wrong, you think I'm going to listen? My support system tells me I'm right. So of course I'm in the right. And it starts there. It starts with all of us sitting down and being like, hey, crying is not a girl thing. It's a person. Showing pain, showing fear, showing anger, it's not female. Being emotional isn't a bad thing. You have feelings. You've got to let them out. You can't just go about life not caring, not feeling, male or female, because you're going to wake up one day and someone else is going to bear the brunt of those feelings. And then what happens? And that conversation needs to start very young. It needs to start with children. It starts with you not letting your son be treated like he needs to be this tough thing. If he falls and he cries, you put a plaster on him, you make him laugh, and you let him go about the day. It's you letting your daughter be lazy and not judging her for it. It's you teaching your son how to cook, because cooking is a survival skill. It's not a skill for a wife. If you can't feed yourself, how are you going to go about the world? Do you know what I mean? It starts with our little kids, and it also starts with us. It starts with us also talking to our parents. That's also a bigger thing, because the way we're raised also makes a very big difference in it. And it literally, the conversation and education has to start at home, because at home is where you learn who your parents are the first people that love you. They teach you about the world. Your relationship with people comes a lot of the times from your parents. If your mom, when she's mad at you, she takes love away from you, you're going to do the same thing to someone else. Because what you're taught is, I'm mad, so I have the right to give you the silent treatment, because that's what my mom's done to me my whole life. You're like, okay, when my mom's mad at me, regardless of the mistake, she hits me. Kids are literally monkey see, monkey do, copy and paste. So it starts there. It starts literally at home.
Okay, so where does the conversation start in the case of you just grew up in a broken home? Like, where do you start fixing it? Because you're like, it starts at home, but if it hasn't started at home, now what do you do as a man?
I'd say we need to push for this in schools, and specifically in high schools, because I do understand that most parents wouldn't want their children learning about stuff like this in their more developmental stages. And so a better time, in my opinion, would be around their early to late high school years, if not throughout the entire high school career. So I'd say specifically in grade 8, 9, and 10, when people undergo these changes, when they start experiencing certain attractions, that they may be taught in all manners, from what no means, what consent is, how it works under South African law, the social stigmas being removed of certain things, acceptance of and tolerance of people around you, things like that. I feel very strongly about the term men don't cry, because naturally, as a Christian man, I know that, and do correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that the shortest verse in the Bible is where Jesus wept. So you're telling me that a man cannot cry, but the King of Kings in my faith wept. What does that say about my God? So I find that there are many outdated terms, and a lot of these things do stem from actual survival practices. Back then, men did have to, because biologically we were strong, we were more built for the hunt, for protection, for things like that. But we're not in that era anymore. We're in the 21st century. And we must act like 21st century people.
Question to you guys: Can we hold the economy or the government accountable for some of these things? Because you get economies like Cuba, close to perfect. You can walk at night, nothing will happen to you. Leave your keys in the car, nothing will happen. So can we hold the government or the law accountable for some things? Because we are what is it? A democratic country, right? Our laws are not as strict as those countries I'm talking about. The penalties are more lenient. You get it? So can we actually hold the government accountable?
That's a really interesting question that I was actually going to touch on a little bit in the case of now looking at how the institutions that run the country are reacting to this movement and the issues that are faced by those who suffer as victims of gender-based violence. In your perspective, would it not be, if I'm not being too presumptuous, would it not be simply put a good idea for the government and the institutions that keep us safe to make it a point to change and reform the education system to allow for topics like this to be raised on a regular basis? And even in a case like that, then my follow-up would be, would it not end up being a scenario like what was happening with the education of STIs and HIV and AIDS that every child learns about in LO, but somehow just became a fizzled out topic that's just brought up whenever?
Mm.
And how do we make sure to keep those institutions accountable to make sure this happens? Because at the end of this movement, when we've now got the result that we want from it or the solutions that we think will work, how are we going to keep pushing to make sure they stay in the back of people's minds, to stay in conversations, to not become fizzled out as if they never happened, so that history doesn't repeat itself?
I think you can definitely hold the government accountable. I think, but also what people forget, which is also the fine line, government has its roles, but we also as citizens have our role. Government can put harsh punishments. Like if you read Deverno and I are law students, so we've read the law. Our legislation in terms of even defining rape is very broad.
Yeah.
So if someone, it doesn't always have to be vaginally, like South Africa's law has the space for that.
Yeah.
Where we need to start coming down is first, let's start with SAPS. Let's start with our police force. And let's start with the fact that how many of our police take rape seriously? And I mean, if a boy goes into the police office and he says, I was raped, are our cops going to take that seriously? Do you know what I mean? Like I think there's different expectations for different branches and parts of our governance as a country.
Exactly.
So when we talk about government, yes, our president needs to make a stance against this. He needs to come right out and say it and call it what it is instead of tiptoeing around it. We can't just G20s around the corner, let's behave. We can't do that because G20 is going to happen and there's going to be rapes. There's going to be women being beat. The stats aren't going to stop for a day just because we have guests in the country. Do you know what I mean? But also, even when we look at other countries and the way other countries are, part of that is also the culture. Because in South Africa, we have to think, what is our culture also just as South Africans, as South African people? Are we a nation that truthfully is trusting of each other? Because I think, if we're honest, somewhere along the lines, the trust that used to exist amongst us isn't there anymore. Because I think of where I grew up, right? We lived in the same house for 14 years before we moved, 14, 15. And up until I think 2018, you could leave your house unlocked for the whole night. No one's coming inside.
Wait.
No one's going to rob you.
Which place is that?
It's not Stelter's side. But
not here in South Africa. Pilla, the crime rates, if I'm not mistaken, South Africa is up there.
Yeah.
There's something wrong.
But then again, you can also account for the reported crimes.
But I'm talking about, like, from my experience, this is how we lived. Like, we could go on holiday, we could leave our dog in the yard, and we could trust that our neighbor would do that. And then all of a sudden, after I think like 2018, there was just a string of robberies in our area. And it went from being like, okay, this is really safe. What's going on now? Who's moved into the neighborhood? What's different? And I feel like we need to be honest that things have changed over the years. And even just us as a people, do we trust each other? Do we feel safe around each other? Because think about when you're in town and your mom tells you, hey, don't put it in the boot. Don't put it under, don't leave it out in the open. I think that's also part of our, like, yes, crimes are happening, but it's also part of just our overall culture as South Africans. And that's something that's got to change between us, because we can tell government can put all the legislation they want. It also does still boil down to us and our personal agency, because I think, yes, government has a role in providing better frameworks, providing real resources, because yes, okay, you can go get a rape kit, you can do all these things, but how many shelters do we have? What are the actual resources that are not done privately or through NGOs that are, really supporting victims? Does the government have something that's like Women for Change that's actively working out there? And if they are, and none of us know about it, that says a lot about how they're doing their job. You know what I mean? Like, we all know SARS. We all know SARS gets its job done. So if there's supposedly a task force or an intervention strategy, it's clearly not working. And that's where government needs to go back and actually listen to us as citizens and actually see the issues, see the numbers, because we're a country that's very honest about our statistics. So they know the numbers, they know them for fact. So I think it's a 50-50. Government can put in all the work at once, but if we don't do anything on our side, kind of means nothing. I don't know.
I'd say back to culture. I feel that South Africans lately have normalized the fact that our crime is this high. And I feel that becomes a problem, because when people talk about, there was another rape case today, people don't naturally go to the obvious option of calling it out, being that's appalling. People go, what has this country come to? And it's almost a resignation of our current state. And I really feel that we should not be lax. And this is a separate issue akin to that of load shedding. We should not accept this as a way of life. It should not be. And therefore we must treat it as something that should not be. The same thing goes for the high crime rates. We should not treat it as just another facet of our nation, because it should not be. It's a rot and it's a problem.
All right. Speaking on both of those points that you have made, as mobilizing citizens, how do we foster a sort of sense of safety for ourselves, in the sense that how do we foster an environment where we can be safer, feel safe around each other, and foster an environment where victims can feel safe expressing the things that they've encountered and trust that those things will be dealt with?
I think
Okay.
sorry. I think leave the prejudice at the door. Leave your, like, if you don't walk into the room with empathy, if you do not walk into the room with compassion, stay outside. Because victims, their stories are not for you to feel comfortable. Their stories are things they're going to carry for the rest of their lives. And rape looks different for everyone. Some people, it was a violent experience. Some people, it was a partner, and they look back and they didn't want to be there. They felt pressured into it. They felt coerced into it. Some people, I went out with my friends, I woke up and I was naked. And that's that. All these experiences, though, strip something from you that you don't get back overnight. Because even when we think about robberies take away your sense of security. You don't feel safe in your own home anymore, because if this window's open, what if someone gets in? But then they're going to cut through the roof. Like, there's no sense of security for you anymore in a place that's your safe space. So when we have this conversation, when we create this safety, whatever you have, leave it at the door. You come in with love, you come in with kindness, and you come in to understand the person next to you. Because the moment you can do that, the moment I can say, I can come to Diverno and I can say, hey, this happened to me. And I know he's going to listen. I know he's going to understand. Even if he can't provide the justice I need, I have somewhere where I'm allowed to be a victim. I have somewhere where I'm allowed to be hurt. I have somewhere where my trauma is allowed to exist and it's seen for what it is and how painful it is. And once we go about there, it gets a lot easier, because if I go to the person next to me and I'm honest about my pain, that person's going to hear me, and that's a step forward. Because, I mean, it happened this weekend. I was going somewhere and I was taking a cab because my mom couldn't take me. And my cab driver was actually talking about they were assembling people to go beat up a boy who raped someone the night before. I was like, yes. I mean, violence is not always the answer, but they were like,
Especially
no.
mob justice.
Mob justice, like, it works because they're like, listen, we're going to do this to him now because he's going to go rape someone else. He needs to know there's consequences. And it doesn't always have to be mob justice. Mob justice works, though. We can't lie about it. It does work in communities. But it's just knowing that I am a victim. Someone's not going to turn around and tell me, what were you wearing? What were you doing for that to happen to you? I went to bed, dude. I was with my partner. I thought I was somewhere safe. Do you know what I mean? Like, it starts there, and it's just knowing that there's a space for you, and that'll make it a lot easier to go about trusting each other because there's the space to not have to be the perfect victim. There's the space to be broken and know that someone's either going to hold me or someone's going to go to bat for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, to add on that, I agree that we need to empathize with one another more often. It's so easy, especially in this current age, to just live passing by everyone else. To just be passers-by in the lives of people you've probably lived next to for years, for maybe even decades. And to not know, do any of you know your neighbors' names? Do you know what their families are like? Do you know that if I have to go somewhere for a business trip or something, that I can rely on that person to take care of my pets or my dogs or to just check on my house every now and again? We need to be more present in each other's lives. And we need to, I agree with that, especially with a country with as much baggage as ours. We need to leave our prejudice at the door. We need to be accepting of each other because it's our land. And if we wish to strive for freedom, as we always say we do, we must give people the freedom to express things like that.
Understood. I think I would like then to take this conversation into a direction of the word of the day that I think summed up very well what the next step should be, which is solidarity. A sort of sense of unity where we move together towards a much better future in the sense that it's not about having to agree that we are on the same page about everything, but agreeing on the actions we need to take to make every day a better day. And I think that's honestly what this conversation, this movement is about. Because Women for Change isn't necessarily about, oh, let's put women in the front of everything and make them the faces of this scenario. They unfortunately have become the faces because they are struggling under this sort of oppression. And I think what this movement is trying to achieve is to bring us together to address this. Because the only way something like this can be dealt with is with a unified mind, a unified action plan. But I don't know if you have any words that you think could best describe what the next step would be.
I know solidarity is a perfect word for it.
Yeah.
But I do believe that we need to stop idling as a society, as men, as women. We need to act.
And I think there's also definitely space for accountability on both sides because you not holding your friend accountable for the fact that he's 22 dating a high schooler, that's a problem.
Yeah, man, we just need to be honest about those things. We know the taxi drivers that are making these young kids pregnant. It takes a village. We know these police officers who are not making these people comfortable when they report their cases.
Yeah.
It takes a village. That's why we appreciate mob justice. It sends a message that if you rape,
There are consequences.
consequences.
Yeah.
Don't understand.
In respect to that, I'd also like to thank both of you because, again, this movement isn't about hashtags or profile pictures. It's about the courage to have these conversations, to confront them head on and not idle, to move in any direction, be it a direction we don't know. Movement is movement and growth is growth. And I'm hoping that by having these conversations, we're moving towards a world that is even slightly better than this, because any progress is good progress. in that sense. And I looked up some of good avenues for those who are currently suffering under this type of oppression. We have the GBV Command Center. I'm just going to shout out the number. If you feel like yourself or someone you know is in dire need, be it not even dire need, if you feel they are not comfortable where they are and they might be suffering under this, look into the Command Center. The number is 0800 428 428. Or you could look into Lifeline SA 0861 322 322. And there is victim support line from the SAP CS, which is also 088 150 150. And if you have any thoughts that you would like to share, that you would like us to go over, to address here at Part of Work, you can email us at partofwork@gmail.com. Your voice is always valuable. Your opinion, your take is feeding into a conversation that will continue to grow, and change will happen from that courage that you have brought forward. And again, would like to thank you, Dev. I'd like to thank you as well, Kalisa. I'm hoping that this has been a very fruitful conversation for you and everyone listening. But that's been us at Part of Work. And if you see something, say something.
Thank you.